Frank, you don't need to start now. We will get started about 1 minute after the hour, so in about a minute and a half. Daniel Osmer, you've got your hand up. Can you ask it in chat? Daniel and I knew each other way back in Wilton, New Hampshire. We were co-founders of New Hampshire Citizens for Choice in Education. Okay, over to you, Nick.
Well, thank you very much, Andrew. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's MysTech seminar. What are subnature and supernature? This is our first precursor to our MysTech annual conference, which will be this year from August 6th to 9th, and I'm sure I'll see all of you there. Thank you for coming on today. I'm your moderator, Nicholas Peak, calling in from Washington, D.C. And I want to let everyone know that while we have over 300 people registered for this today, and look for some last minute people as well, there are also a couple of things of great significance going on today. The first being it is 17. Mai, 17th of May, Norway's National Day. So Aleodor, among others, is going to be out there celebrating today, drinking lots of aquavit, dancing in three-quarter time, and thanking God they aren't Swedish. The second thing we've got today is here in Washington, D.C., everyone's hometown. Today is the National Jubilee of Prayer, Praise, and Thanksgiving. So, 3/4 of a mile from where I sit right now, there are 15,000 people gathering on the National Mall. I don't know who's going to be there today, aside from God, but they're bound to be very, very big security issues going on. So if at any time today, when I have my mic open, you hear a lot of sirens going by, which is apt to happen, then you will know that someone isn't praying the right way. All right. Before I introduce our panelists, I want to impress something upon you and ask all of you something. And that is that you each pull out a pad of paper and a pencil and write down some of what you hear today. Write down some of what you think today. Write down what you think will encourage you tomorrow, the next day, next week, next month, to continue what you are here to join with us today. And that is, you are on your spiritual journey, each one of you. You have been led here to this presentation, just as you are led to anthroposophy, just as you have been led to Edgar Cayce and to your church and to whatever else you pursue spiritually. This is good. This is important. We have all been summoned to a high crusade, as George Trevelyan was fond of saying, he of Findhorn fame. But this is very, very true. Do not forget that we all must take an active part. We must support each other, and we must continue in what are increasingly difficult times. So please, I beg you, don't just sit here today and presume to only listen. If you don't take an active, receptive part, then everything that is said is just going to go in one ear and out the other. So take the time to write some salient points down that will help you on your path, and that will allow you to help other anthroposophists on their path as well. Now, today, again, the topic is what are subnature and supernature. I am not going to recite the wonders of each of our panelists. I will just go through in brief before I start introducing them individually. Today we begin with Doug Smith, who will bring his deep background in physics, resonance, and the study of light in living systems. Then we will have Ralf Tita, who provides an experiential perspective through cymatics, the study of visible sound and vibration. We also have Donna LaPre, who brings insights from biodynamics and working farms and gardens with forces from supernature. We have Aliodor Lazarescu, who carries the wisdom of early childhood when etheric bodies are coming to birth. We also have Robert McKay, an esteemed and established anthroposophist and student of Rudolf Steiner's. And then our anchorman and one of the co-founders of the Mysteries of Technology group, Andrew Linnell, MysTech co-founder, and he offers decades of experience in the computer industry paired with a lifelong study of mechanical occultism. I'm going to introduce each one of the speakers, and he or she will speak for 10 minutes. I'm going to keep everyone on track, so we will be able to get through with everyone within an hour. Then we'll take a 5-minute break, come back. We will have some questions. I will be asking some questions of the panelists and getting them into group discussion mode. And then after about 30 or 40 minutes, we will open up to questions from all you all out there. So we aren't going to exceed 2 hours today, but I do think it's going to be a chock full 2. And so, tally ho, our first speaker is Doug Smith. Doug, take it away.
Okay. Is that displaying all right for everybody? Guess so. Okay. All right. So Rudolf Steiner, in his final letter to members written the day before his death, described that the spirit connected with the source of human evolution had gradually disappeared from our conception of nature, and had been replaced by a powerful Ahrimanic spirit as our technological civilization advanced. He described how, in prior ages, we found the spirit within our view of nature, but technical developments emancipated from nature cause us to stare more and more fixedly at the mechanical material. This mechanical material domain, in this domain, all divine spiritual being connected with the origin of human evolution is completely absent. Instead, it is dominated by the Ahrimanic. Thus, our technical science and industry has gradually sunk down into the lowest regions of nature and below nature into the realms of subnature. But he also pointed out that in the science of the spirit, we create another sphere in which there is no Ahrimanic element. By coming to know this spirituality, to which the Ahrimanic powers have no access, we are strengthened to confront Ahriman within the world. Thus, in these last written words, Rudolf Steiner stressed the importance of developing a conscious experience of spirit knowledge, wherein we would be able to rediscover our spirit source and develop the inner capacity to confront and rise above our harmonic forces. As he put it, this makes it urgent for man to find in conscious experience a knowledge of the spirit wherein he will rise as high above nature as in his subnatural technical activities he sinks beneath her. Thus, he will create within him the inner strength not to go under. In a lecture on pastoral medicine in 1924, Rudolf Steiner spoke of nature, supernature, and subnature, and their relationship to the beings of the divine Trinity. The concept of subnature described there is similar but broader than the one we just touched on. He described how, in the consciousness of our physical and etheric bodies, during sleep, when our bodies separate, we may perceive the culmination of what we received through ancient Saturn and ancient Sun planetary incarnations. This represents a realm below nature that we are not normally aware of, subnature. If we ask what can be associated with this realm of the lower gods, as he put it, the answer is the being whom we call the Father when we think of the Divine Trinity. Likewise, when we become, sorry, I didn't mean to do that. Likewise, when we become conscious in our astral body and eye through clairvoyance, we enter the opposite pole, the realm of the spirit, the realm of supernature. We only live in the world of nature when there is a normal relationship between our soul and spirit and our physical etheric organism. We are able to go out from nature, thus, in two directions, in the direction of subnature to the Father and in the direction of supernature to the Spirit. Since the occurrence of the mystery of Golgotha, Christ has become the mediator between both worlds. He is the one who permeates the world of nature, the world of normal human experience. He creates harmony between subnature and supernature. Christ is therefore the spiritual life in nature, in a sense, the source of life in nature. Steiner goes on to say, at the moment we descend too deeply, too intensely into physical corporeality, we come into relation with the subnatural. We fall to a level at which elemental beings, beings of higher hierarchies at various stages of their development, are active. We come into relation with those gods who are unfolding their activity below the level of nature. This is where illness can arise. It is also the domain of the elemental spirits of birth and death, our harmonic spirits that inspire us to develop modern technologies. In terms of health and illness, in the simplest sense, the healing process involves leading the human being from the experience of subnature to the experience of nature, from Father to Christ, the spiritual life in nature. I think it's also helpful to consider some additional concepts in this framework. First, heredity as a hidden aspect of the physical body lies in the realm of the Father. Rudolf Steiner speaks of this in his lectures to priests on the Apocalypse at St. John. The act of overcoming hereditary tendencies or hereditary illness can be understood in terms of the same healing process leading from the Father to Christ. Karma, on the other hand, is derived from our sojourn into the spiritual world between death and a new birth and belongs to the realm of the spirit. Karma can also manifest as illness, and we can become and can also be resolved through Christ, who is present, who in the present age is actually becoming the Lord of karma. Finally, we can consider Lucifer and Ahriman, spiritual beings who embody two poles of evil connected with human evolution on Earth. Lucifer tempts us in the spirit, supernature, to dive into sense experience and materiality, promoting selfishness, independence, and egoism, whereas Ahriman seeks to keep us chained to the material world, subnature, isolated, unconscious of the spirit, and consumed by fear and materialism and destructive forces. Lucifer and Ahriman are necessary for us to evolve our independent I and freedom, and to develop the forces of love to evolve as spiritual beings. The representative of humanity's statue shows how we can wield Christ forces to hold Lucifer and Ahriman in balance. When we consider our planet as a whole, we generally think of it as a ball of matter, molten magma and metals in a semi-liquid state covered by a thin crust of solid rock, water, and air shaped by gravity. This material earth belongs to the realm of the Father, Subnature. If you prefer, you can also think of it as Mother Earth, Gaia after the Greeks. But of course, the Earth does not stand alone. It is embedded in our solar system, our galaxy, and the seemingly infinite cosmos beyond. The vast spaces of the cosmos are not empty, however, they are full of spiritual beings. The interface between our planet and the cosmos is where nature exists and life evolves. It is the interface between subnature and supernature where spiritual beings of an immense variety are most active. Rudolf Steiner taught that the formation assumed by our Earth is a creation of the Elohim, the spirits of form. And one characteristic consequence of that is the way in which human beings overcome gravity through their power of standing upright. The spirits of form are, in a certain sense, the ruling forces in earthly existence, working through other spirits whom we call archai, archangeloi, and angeloi. Everything in our earthly existence that relates to space is shaped out of the non-spatial by the spirits of form. The spirits of form act outside of space and at the same time through all space, streaming etheric forces from the far reaches of the cosmos to the earth. Etheric forces interact intimately with finely divided matter, the molecular world, bringing life, movement, and organization to chaos. This is the interface between spirit and matter. Rapid action on the molecular scale translates to slower, gradual growth. Transformation and movement on larger scales of individual organisms and populations. An important characteristic of living systems is that they evolve through a succession of individuals, slowly but continuously. The etheric realm is intimately connected with the world of elemental spirits. Rudolf Steiner describes this in detail in many places, but particularly chapter 3 of his book, The Threshold of the Spiritual World. Life itself is intangible from a materialistic perspective, and is therefore something of a mystery to us, but its presence or absence is unmistakable. In his lectures on the temple legend, Rudolf Steiner indicated that just as humankind has now become master craftsmen of the inanimate, our destiny is to become master craftsmen of the living. This is beginning to happen through biotechnology and genetic engineering on a physical level, but it's also beginning to happen on a soul level, as predicted in the Gospels and sought for by the Grail stream. True knowledge of the mysteries of life, birth, and death will not come, however, until humankind can really embody Christ's forces and confront Lucifer and Ahriman consciously, as Rudolf Steiner said. He indicated that the mechanical and moral spheres must interpenetrate each other, just as subnature and supernature interpenetrate. In the future, he said, machines will be driven not only by water and steam, but by spiritual forces, by spiritual morality. This power is symbolized by the Tau sign in Freemasonry. Tau is a driving force which can only be set in motion by the power of selfless love.
Doug,
Steiner
I've got
said-
to cut you off there.
Okay, this is the last slide and I'm almost done.
Okay.
Steiner said it will be possible to use this power to drive machines, which would, however, otherwise cease to function if egotistical people try to make use of them. He also suggested that such future technology would utilize harmoniously related vibrations reinforced and amplified by resonance. Future machines will be driven, at least in part, by spiritual forces acting through the etheric realm into matter. Through the power of selfless love, machines could be set in motion, but these capabilities could be bestowed on mankind only if simultaneously there comes into being, as widely as possible, an entirely selfless social order, which of course we don't have. Otherwise, such power would only bring harm. And I will stop there.
Wonderful, thank you. And thank you for that lovely photograph of El Yunque rainforest in Puerto Rico. When I was last there after Hurricane Maria, there wasn't a leaf on a tree. I like your view of it better.
Yeah, that was some time ago.
Yes, on both counts, thankfully. Good. All right, thank you. Now let us turn to Ralf Tita. Ralf, you have the floor. Take it away, and I'll let you know when 10 minutes are up.
Nick, thank you, and hello all. I will just jump into the theme. I want to look to the relationship between the etheric and the subnature from the perspective of listening and from the perspective of sound. Just because when you think about our everyday's life, we are surrounded by artificial sound. We have loudspeakers, we have headphones, but also like the digital assistants. And when you're outside shopping, you're constantly surrounded by artificial sounds and artificial noises. And when we look to the part of the sound, there's always a question, how accurate is the reproduction of sound? But I want to focus on something else, that it's not only the accuracy of sound, but there's a deeper question. The deeper question is what's happening in the act of listening to sound and this is something you can certainly observe by yourself when you listen to a recording, and a lot of people using recordings for going to sleep, for instance, you're getting somehow dull, you're getting very passive in your perception. And on the other hand, when you're in a concert, you can be very active in listening and becoming an inwardly active manner and being more free in general, and also being really regenerated from the sounds you're listening, and you really take something home with you. And also when you hear the same thing on a recording, you don't get the same feeling, the same energy. Now, when we look to the approach, what the materialistic, our days technology is looking or seeing sound, they speak about frequency, the amplitude, maybe the phase, the signal, let's call it the information. Through semantic research, we know that sound can do more. Sound in general, and this is what Chladni showed in his experiments, can produce order, can produce form. It can change an unordered pattern to an ordered pattern. And later research by Faraday shows that sound also is very much connected to movement, to motion. Air above vibrating surfaces is moving in mostly in circular movements or in toroidal movements. And it was Hans Jenny, the person who coined the term cymatics, who pointed out that there's a what he called basic triadic phenomena. There's form, there's movement, and there's a rhythm in between. And this is exactly what Duff just mentioned to the etheric formative forces. The etheric is always working in these three manners. So the question is, when we listen to music, do we only listen to our ears and our brain? That's what the medicine shows us. But it's way more. We listen with our whole body, We listening also with our astral body, and also with our etheric body. And this can lead us to an activation in the eye. This is exactly what is happening in a concert. But when it comes to reproduction of sound, the problem is that there's something missing. In German, we have two words for sound, which is Schall, which is the physical sound pressure wave. We have the name Klang, which is more the emotional side. And we have tone, which is like the spiritual aspect of sound. And this leads us to something that there's more to sound itself. When we only have the physical aspect of sound, it's only this pressure side, the information side. It's you could say, a stimulus in the senses, but it's nothing that we get an inwardly activation of this. And this is because all the sound reproduction we have is just connected to electromagnetical forces. It is forced down into subnature, how Rudolf Steiner mentioned it. And the effect in listening is that we are more bound, more fixed to the physical side, that we have no inner participation really. And when there's a possibility to add this living side of sound, the etheric side of sound again, we can become more active, more inner upright. So how can this be done? This can be done by changing the way we work with technology, by introducing the knowledges from cymatics, the combination from form and from material sound, because cymatics is always about how sound is interacting with the medium. And when we treat the medium in the right way, we can re-enter these living forces. And when this happens, there's a possibility that we can come in our listening process to a self-activating. So this is not an automatical process, same as in a concert. I have to become active in my eye. I have to be active listening. And when I'm active in listening, I can confront myself with the music or with whatever I'm hearing. And this then gives me the possibility to be more free in my inner activation. So the main question for me is what kind of technology we can develop in a terms that it's helping the human perception, because through the perception we can come to an understanding. And how can this become to a strengthening of the eye? And also we become more awake and more free in our human manner. So with this said, I want just to give this brief idea, and we can speak more about it in the discussion. Thank you.
You know, thank you. Well said, Ralf. And the one thing I'm not prepared for is for panelists to cut short. Thank you. I'll give you that on the back end. We'll make up for that. Okay. Very good. Now, I think it would be excellent, Donna, if you would take the floor and lead us in your presentation. Take it away.
Thank you. Well, we have this threefold picture that's been spoken about. I'd like to point to another one because my interest is making things a little more concrete for people, especially people who might not be as aware of all of this world of anthroposophy. If we look at the etheric, one aspect of this is that it's, the life forces that animate living organisms, plants, animals, and humans. There's an aspect of it that has to do with time. And Subnature forces move rapidly. Everything proliferates. We feel bombarded. There's an immense speed and its reach of influence. And if we go to older technologies, which to me are conscious use of hand tools, they're hand-operated machines. We see what we're doing. We know how these things work pretty much. Between these two, we have spiritual timing. And this is when and how things are brought into manifestation and activity. So it's here, I think, we have an opportunity to learn to perceive more, to develop a stronger relationship and better concepts. And one way is actually observing nature's rhythms. And we see this through the weaving of the seasons. But also beyond that, we go into the moods of soul in humans and nature, because we intersect. There, we're able to develop supersensory perception, and in quite exquisite detail. And we begin to understand how this kind of timing leads into eternal time duration. So this is very important because subnature provokes anxiety. It's overwhelming, and fear. And this is not what we want. We want to come into this middle ground, be conscious of what's happening, and develop a relationship with the planetary spirit, which Doug Smith spoke about in a different way. Rudolf Steiner said the spiritual conception of the world is a curative conception. So this shows us what power we have when we really understand. I'd like to talk briefly about agriculture, land use, and war. Now, these are everyday things that we're exposed to. I mean, war has become an everyday thing in our time. Agriculture fulfills the necessity of having to eat. Everybody has to eat. Even if we don't grow our own food, a lot of work is spent procuring and preparing it. So nothing else for economic life can occur without agriculture. Therefore, the farmer is the primary economist. And it's very interesting to me how farming is such an essential part of life, yet we're so dissociated from it. It's something like an afterthought. We might assume farming or gardening is natural, but isn't. What we essentially do is remove plants, sometimes rocks, but mostly plants we don't want in favor of ones we do want. Seemingly, nature has no voice in that. This type of land use began in the ancient Persian cultural epoch, and it was guided through cosmic wisdom via Zarathustra, the initiate. Humans had to make tools and open up the earth. And this was consciously, directly experienced. This is a technology. Land use also has to do with excavation, reshaping the earth, and building structures. Mostly, locally available materials were used, and people took their design inspiration from nature, from the natural environment and the materials that they use. Now, this is not the case anymore. Warfare is an activity consisting of one group of people invading the cultural or territorial bounds of another group of people, usually to seize resources, land, water access, goods, even humans. The tools and forms of warfare have changed. The same as with agriculture and land use. Subnature inspirations began to direct and dominate what we produce to conduct these activities. Returning to agriculture, we see mostly large-scale mechanized and computerized farming. The farmer Doesn't even need to walk across the land, doesn't even need to firsthand observe crops or animals. But of course, I'm speaking about one kind of farming because there are many others. But this is the image we're fed of farming. And this is the image a lot of people participate in. We have a preponderance of chemically assisted agriculture for killing plants we don't want, for killing insects we don't want. These chemicals were leftovers from World War I weapons. So it's a war against the earth, a war against people. Food gives us vital forces to think, to move. It affects our feeling life. And I'm going to point to something that a lot of people know about. When Ehrenfried Pfeiffer asked Rudolf Steiner why more people didn't take up spiritual science, Rudolf Steiner pointed to nutrition. And he said that the food did not give the will forces people needed to really come to spiritual thinking and insight. Now, this is 100 years ago, and he was speaking mostly about whole food, where now we have a lot of processed food and things have deteriorated. We've got genetic manipulation. So think of how much more it's gone on. With biodynamics, we're given the ability to connect and view food growing nature too with the patterns and forces of our primal origins, which were originally spheres of love, of harmony, of wisdom, and will and wisdom. So this is interesting to think about. Biodynamics isn't a complete solution as it's not widespread enough so many more could have access. Now there's more interest, but it still needs to be remembered that essentially biodynamics is about a re-spiritualization, a life-renewing, perpetuating way of cultivating the earth and giving humans a form of spirit they can take into themselves. Architecture affects the physical body and well-being of reality. Rudolf Steiner said that poor design was a tremendous cause of problems that even led to war. Housing developments were all look the same, efficiency, everything's all the same. There's a proliferation and a replication that reminds me of the fruit earth. Subnature has to do with the forces of the interior of the earth. We need to remember that. Technological devices used to have distinct functions. Now they are blended. We can blow up people with cell phones. Once weapons were overt, and now we have super sophisticated surveillance destructive weapons, remotely controlled, that remove responsibility for what we're doing. So we can extirpate entire populations very rapidly and destroy their culture. One acquaintance in my area of work is Ukrainian, and she said being exposed to war is like ambient predation every day, 24 hours a day, this ambient predation. There are solutions, I think, and a lot of it has to do with threefolding. So I'm going to stop here.
Wonderful. Thank you, Donna. I know you had more to say, but thank you. All right, now let us move on. Aliodor Lazarescu, please.
Thank you.
Let us
Thank you,
in.
Nick. Thank you. So I'd like to bring to our attention, and I'm very happy for all that you have brought, and I'm sure for what Robert and Andrew will bring, that we as men and women, obviously, we have to be conscious of using our senses and our thinking. And education is one of the most important things that we can, let's say, invest our consciousness and our awareness towards it. If we think of the 12 senses and nurturing them in children, that's a big, important aspect. But we as adults have to use these 12 senses consciously as a counterbalance for a more and more stifling technology. I would like to point out that we tend to think of the approaching technology as contemporary adults, and many times as anthroposophists, of it being something along the lines of an antagonist. But we do lose the sight that we are the creators of technology, and we have a responsibility towards it. Also, I would like to bring to our awareness something that we have talked about at the meeting of the anniversary of 100 years since the first kindergarten. So in 2026, it's been 100 years since the first Waldorf kindergarten, that we have to be aware that children coming towards Earth to incarnate in this day and age face challenges different than ever before. Starting from electromagnetical forces and the technology to the, let's say, disturbance in the etheric forces because of these forces, these electromagnetical forces, but also to a world fearful of both technology and itself, as you very well put it, Donna, before. It is of critical importance for us, not only as educators, but as adults and members of society, to have an enthusiasm for life, not only to be fearful, to be role models for the children and make spaces for them so that they can develop the inner soul strength and amazement, not only for life and technology, but for technology in a non-utilitarian view. They have to develop an enthusiasm for goodness, for beauty, and truth. So I'd like to point out a small picture, if I'm allowed to. Can you all see it? Can it be seen? Yeah. In the foreword for the first course, school course, Rudolf Steiner said that educators must become men and women of culture. And I think in this day and age, we all adults have to become men and women of culture. We all have to know what is happening in the world, but we don't have, and we shouldn't do it only with our thinking, but we also should do it with our feeling and our willing. And why am I saying that? Because we all teach each other something, and we all teach the children around us something. And we have to keep in mind that we don't teach now in the present, only in the present, but we actually teach with our future self. So with our future I on which we work, and we teach the past children. So our future incarnation works directly for education with the previous incarnations of children. So we have to work with all our three forces, our thinking, our feeling, and willing, through our I. And that means being conscious of everything that will happen, that happened, and be conscious of what we can do right now. So I will cut it short now because I think we should use the time for a group discussion furthermore. But what I would like to bring is that education brings an equilibrium, a balance that can only help in the future development of new technologies. Because if we don't make the space for the spirit to manifest itself in the material, nothing new can come. So back to you, Nick.
Well, thank you. Really, you sure? You
I have many more ideas, but I think we should just have these 2 or 3 thoughts that we can bring along in the next hour.
You are a man after my own heart, Aliodor. Thank you very much. All right. Robert McKay, take us away if you would, please.
Thank you very much. I'm more than a little uncomfortable with what I'm going to talk about today, because I really want to raise an
Good.
issue. Pardon me?
Good.
Yeah. I really want to raise an issue that relates to the challenge of the way culture is moving into subnature. I'm actually going to read the second of the 3 leading thoughts that Doug talked about. The second one goes like this. This makes it necessary for humanity in living inner experience to come to spirit knowledge in which they raise themselves as high above into supernature as they do down below nature with our subnatural technical occupations. Human beings thereby create within ourselves the power to not go under. Now, my concern in reading something like that is I think we need to understand this phrase in living inner experience to come to a spirit knowledge. This cannot be done through the study of anthroposophy. Without a doubt, the study of anthroposophy is absolutely critical to the life of anyone who wants to become a meditant. But study is not sufficient. Study is absolutely essential. You can't do it without the study, and study works on many different levels. But study is not sufficient. Study must lead into a life in meditation, trying to live from the moment you wake up to the moment you fall asleep as a meditant. And what does that mean? The issue that I want to raise, and I only have the courage to raise this publicly by saying I suffer from the same problem, and that is how to sustain a life in meditation. When I look at my own life, I can tell you it's a bloody struggle, and I have good days and bad days. And my aspiration to live as a meditant has yet to be achieved even for a single day. I have some good stretches where I meditate regularly every morning and every night, and then I fall off the wagon. And it's interesting why and how I fall off the wagon. Sometimes I'm frightened of progress. Sometimes seems that I'm just lazy. All sorts of other reasons as well. And I think it's important for us to become interested in why we stop meditating. But when I look across our movement, what I see is a really insufficient attention to basic meditation. I see people making up exercises that may well have value, group processes and other kinds of things that I think are certainly interesting and certainly have to do with the cultivation of the inner life. But what I don't see is a devoted effort to follow the relatively detailed instructions that Rudolf Steiner provides in knowledge of the higher worlds, in occult science, and other places. I see us going to class lessons and really enjoying that kind of empowerment experience, but I don't hear the people that go to the class lesson with me talking about their deep, energetic work with the mantras in between the monthly lessons. Most of the class readers that I know personally do not have a life in meditation. They're not meditating every morning and every night. They're not, working on the pole of seclusion where you're within yourself, and also on the pole of engagement where you're engaged with the natural world around you. So I'm concerned about our movement in that we're not talking about this. This has lived in the kind of quietness of the individual life. It wasn't appropriate for us to ask each other, so did you meditate this morning? Did you not? This has been sort of hidden behind a kind of, I would say, veil of politeness. And certainly, the moment you have a spiritual experience, calling all your friends and saying, hey, guess what happened? Doesn't make a lot of sense. There is, of course, a need for a kind of discretion, especially as the tender shoots of spiritual awareness start to grow in a person. But I think we need to bring the fact that we're not, as a movement, meditating in a rigorous daily way into the spotlight. And we need to ask ourselves why we're not. And, I've tried to talk to a number of people honestly about this, and I get a lot of really interesting reactions. Even Christian community priests who are supposed to pray every day tell me they don't pray every day. Like everybody falls off the wagon. It's hard work. There is something about meditation, I believe, that will essentially burn out the egotism in you. If you start meditating because you say, well, I want to be calmer, or I want to be wiser, or I want to achieve enlightenment, anything that has an egotistical element to it, eventually the meditative path, if you really are working at it seriously, will burn it out of you. You'll realize you're not going to get anything back in the customary way that we get things back for our efforts. I go to work, I get paid, I go to a movie, I get enjoyment, etc., etc. There isn't really a payback system in meditation in the same way. Very often, you'll have a breakthrough and think, oh, I've really made progress in this area, and then nothing for months in the same area, nothing. So there is not the kind of built-in motivational structure to meditation. And I believe only to the extent that you do it out of love for the world will you find a source of motivation strong enough. And what I find in myself is I don't love the world that much. I like myself a lot better, you know? So when it's, at the end of the day and I'm tired and I think I should meditate, there's a real contest in me between I should do something for love of the world, and to heck with the world, I'd rather look after myself. And this is where I find myself struggling to become a meditant. I feel very much like that image of the Grinch who stole Christmas. You remember that suddenly he heard the people singing and his heart grew 10 times? I feel like this is what I need to hear. I need to hear Christian singing in my heart so that it grows big enough that I can meditate every day. But I also think that although it is definitely a personal challenge to create and sustain a life in meditation, I think as a movement, we need to support each other more. I think we need to bring this out of the kind of silent inner, 3 minutes, thanks. The silent inner place where we say to ourselves, well, I didn't meditate today. I'm kind of ashamed about that, but I won't tell anybody, and hopefully nobody will ask me, to a place where we acknowledge with each other that this is hard to do, that we share with each other, what is our meditative regimen? What are we trying to do on a daily basis? How's it going? And of course we have to avoid getting into the kind of sensationalism of sharing our special experiences. But I think there's some middle ground here where we need to actually support each other. I read at one point that Steiner had people make notes, like in a little grid, as to how many times they meditated and when they didn't, and show him that, so that they would be accountable to him for their actual adherence to a meditative regimen. I don't know a single anthroposophist who is accountable publicly to any other anthroposophist for their meditative regimen. Anyway, I just wanted to open this up because I think if we're not going to get into subnature, we have to be meditating. Study's not enough. And so how do we collectively support each other in having really active lives in meditative practice?
Well, thank you, Robert. You certainly hit one of my nerves. Let me take this up with you after the break in the second hour. Essential that this has been brought up. Thank you very much. And I know I'm not the only guilty one here. So now, our anchorman, Andrew Linnell.
Thank you.
Yours.
Thank you all. And Nick, so from our distinguished panelists, you have heard about the what, subnature and supernature, and some about the how. I'm going to use my statement to tell us more about the why. In my statement, I would like to direct our attention to our cosmic purpose in human evolution. Every age has its tasks and challenges. Steiner pointed out that facing death was the challenge of the fourth cultural age. facing evil is the challenge for our current fifth cultural age. And we are deep in the thick of it right now. What do we do? There are three possible views, and there's probably more, but I'll describe three. One, you say, we are better off without tech. It brings evil. I will not fall into evil, but I will strive into supernature and remain there. I will sleep in a Faraday cage and only attend in-person meetings. View two, tech will enable each human to become omniscient gods. I will integrate tech into my body at every opportunity and thereby transcend this imperfect biological machine, my body. I will be born again out of the creative God within humanity and live powerfully forever. View three, we need to do both. Technology will cause us to slide down, as you've been hearing, into subnature, into Ahriman's realm. If I am part of society as a Rosicrucian, I must go down the slide. Ooh. But I can balance this by also striving upwards into supernature. It will be, as you just heard from Robert, hard inner work, but I have been given the capacities to do so. Maybe I need my little notebook. Such expansion of my consciousness will be in keeping with this age of the consciousness soul. Obviously, view one is the voice of Lucifer, and view two is that of Ahriman, and view three brings these two extremes into balance, hopefully. But to do view three and thereby also enter Ahriman's realm, we need to truly understand, and I'll say the statement, where two or more are gathered in my name, there I will be in their midst. You can conquer the dragon within yourself, and this is important, but you cannot wrest what we must from Ahriman if you try to do it alone. Wrest something from Ahriman? Why? Because we are to be the guardian angels to those who will be upon the next human stage. That is the next planetary condition called Jupiter. Its humans will look nothing like we do. Here on Earth, we have 4 elements and 4 ethers. We are fourfold beings then. On Jupiter, its humans will be fivefold beings among 5 elements and 5 ethers. Eventually, there will be 7 of each on Vulcan. What is subnature today will come again on Jupiter, albeit quite differently. But the experience we gain now will help us as the 10th hierarchy to be able to incarnate into Jupiter human bodies and thereby to guide its humans. Just as an aside, angels did this for us earlier on in human evolution. Early in their evolution, we will need to do that for them. You might say, oh, that's so far off, Andrew. I'm concerned only about the here and now. Such an attitude is acceptable if our temporal lives had nothing to do with duration, which Donna spoke about. But which of the 3 views we take now will affect our future incarnations? The sliding down into subnature is happening now, and Ahriman's incarnation is imminent. I put it around the year 2233. Most of us will witness this from the spiritual world, Ahriman's incarnation. What we learn now can help us to help those incarnated when Ahriman incarnates. The evolution of consciousness and our organs of perception has undergone great change since Egyptian and Greek times and the time of the mystery centers. The mystery on Golgotha was the turning point in time. By 1250, the spiritual world had been sealed off. Even initiates could no longer perceive it or communicate with spiritual beings for advice. In the 17th century, the steam engine with its vacuum was invented. At that moment, the gods who were directing earthly evolution handed over to Ahriman the administration of evolution in the physical. Think about that. Ahriman controls for the rest of Earth evolution what happens in the physical. From this point onwards, our goal is to prepare to leave the physical for our continued evolution. Prepare, that means centuries. The closure of the spiritual world lasted until 1879, when Archangel Michael drove those spirits, whose job it had been to seal off the heavens, given to them by God, down into human consciousness. Now, once again, humans can access the spiritual world. Kali Yuga came to an end in 1899. Then came World War I. Christ appeared in the etheric, just as humanity was sliding into World War II. And that ended with nuclear weapons, and soon after, a Cold War, a Vietnam War. And it seems all the time there's a war somewhere in the world. 1998 came. Now we are preparing for 2033. Here's a quote from Steiner. If men refuse to take the path of returning to the spirit and bringing their intellect with them, then still greater wars will come upon us, wars that will become more and more savage. Again, we must enter subnature for Jupiter evolution, and we must enter supernature for our earthly evolution. I'll close with this quote from Leading Thoughts, and I'm just going to summarize it because you've actually heard it. But this technical process is emanating itself from nature. That's an important clause. And the purely Ahrimanic dominates this sphere. In the science of the spirit, we now create another sphere. And very important, we can create another sphere in which there is no Ahrimanic element. That's supernature. It is just by receiving in knowledge this spirituality to which the Ahrimanic powers have no access that humans are strengthened to confront Ahriman within this world. Thank you. Nick, over to you, and I think our bio break.
Yes, good. Thank you. And I love it. We're pretty much on schedule. This is what I get paid for. All right. Let's everybody take 5 minutes, no longer. So go quick like a bunny and come back. I've got 2 minutes past the hour. Let's come back at 7 minutes past the hour. Mute your mics and see you here in just 5 minutes. All right. Oh, I love her voice. Now, I'm going to set aside that fantasy that those people who don't actually know enough to say anything become moderators for those who do. And I will say that now's when I get to try to balance everything between the questions that I'm going to ask and the answers that our panelists are going to give. We're going to run this for about half an hour with just the panelists. And then at 20 minutes till the hour, we're going to open it up to all y'all. So I'm going to go in the order that the speakers spoke. And starting with Doug Smith, I have a question for you. Doug, do we have a clear conception of what an interpenetration of the moral and mechanical actually means, what it is meant to achieve, and what the risks might be?
Thanks. So I'm going to share again, since I knew this question was coming. So, so there's a place where Rudolf Steiner talked about our different bodies, our eye, our astral body, etheric body, and physical body. And he talked about how each body sort of it is kind of the cause of the next lower body, right? So what happens in the astral drives the etheric, and that drives the physical. And so he talked about morality, moral impulses. So he said, what's expressed in what lives in the astral body is expressed and imprinted on the etheric body and becomes something lasting, our memory. And the act of composing a piece of music is a function of our astral body. The act of acquiring the ability and habit of playing is in our etheric body. So all habits reside in the etheric body. When we make a moral judgment, this is an act of the astral body. And when that certain direction of judgment becomes ingrained in us through repeated judgment, the moral judgment becomes permanent. It becomes our conscience. So the moral judgment is an experience in the astral body, and the conscience is an experience in the etheric body. And so there's this, so for a moral action to happen in the physical realm, there first needs to be an impulse, a moral judgment, a conscious to recognize or remember what action is appropriate, and a physical means to carry out the action, sort of breaking it down that way. So to me, this leads to a whole bunch of questions sort of related to that question we started with, right? How do we recognize moral impulses? Do they kind of resonate with the conscience in a way that's analogous to the way music resonates with our soul? How could a machine differentiate between a moral and an egotistical impulse, right? How would that happen? Could a machine have the equivalent of a conscience, right? Could AI be adapted to do this? Could it recognize a moral impulse? Perhaps it could learn the characteristics of, the way AI works, what moral impulses look like when they happen. It could be taught. But could it, and maybe it could predict correctly, by looking at people's reactions at kind of their emotional responses and that. And but could we ever trust it? Could it be easily fooled and subverted to respond to other kinds of impulses? And then so finally, so I will offer as a sort of postulate that only a living being or entity with an etheric body could recognize and resonate with a true moral impulse. Subnatural computers, AI, that respond only to so-called immoral electrical impulses, which Rudolf Steiner actually talked about, right? He called it that. Would not be capable of doing it. So if we really want machines that respond only to moral impulses, we would need to develop machines with an etheric component. I'll call it a moralizer. In essence, a living machine. And I'll stop there.
Good, thank you. Aliodor, you wanted to say something?
He actually responded to my question, but I was thinking about AI and moral impulses, and I was in my mind there was a sort of a parallel with how we got our moral laws, because it didn't really come from ourselves at the start, so we had it from the outside. Maybe we could do as creators of technology, maybe we could ease into that somehow, give something from ourselves to the to the technology.
Yeah, it has to be a human thing, right? I mean, to us, I mean, we're the only sort of, think that we're the only moral creatures on the planet. I don't think that's really true, because you can think about morality in a different sense, whereas, the life of plants is a moral life in a way, I think. Anyway, I'll see what other people want to think about
All
that.
right. Since this really gets to the heart of the mysteries of technology and morality versus mechanical, Andrew, please come in.
Yeah, I wanted to add something to the picture that Doug gave from another lecture by Simon, and I can't tell you the GA number offhand, but that a moral impulse comes not from the eye within the astral body, the luciferic eye, which Doug is pointing out, but it comes from what we might call our higher eye. And by that impulse, it stirs, would be a good verb, the astral body, which causes then vibrations in the etheric body. And what Ralf brought up was a topic 2 years ago in the MysTech conference. Can a machine be built that can be tuned so that it resonates with something that's beginning in the etheric? And for me, this becomes an important question for a moral, what was called a moral machine. Steiner never used that term, but it's been used a lot, that a machine that will only respond to a moral impulse. It's not going to open a book and go, oh yeah, that one's moral. Oh no, that one's not. It's got to be able to tell by the vibration itself. So we might call it the signature of the vibration will allow the machine to say that's moral, that's not. And I think this becomes very important in the future as our physical bodies continue to wither, as our etheric bodies loosen from the physical. Eventually, we're going to need, I know the rocks are coming, transhumanistic ideas to repair what will be going wrong with the physical body. And at some point, if we have prosthetic limbs and these sort of things, we're going to want those limbs not to do every impulse that happens in us, but only our moral impulse.
Andrew, at the risk of questions for some of the other panelists, do you want to keep on this moral mechanistic for a moment? Two other panelists want to chime in again.
I'm ready to pass over to the other two.
Oh, okay. We'll stay on this. Ralf, can you answer some of these issues?
Yes, I think that's a good point where I can jump into the discussion. Because my experience with the Lautsänger, which is in my eyes kind of a moral technology and also kind of an ether technology, it provides something which is not on the physical level of sound. And by putting on, for instance, these headphones to a couple of hundred people now, you can distinguish different groups of people. You have people that are just hearing on the physical level. They don't have any possibilities to sense more. They are just, just ordinary headphones. And then there are people, and the first time I thought it's mostly musicians that are able to instantly understand that there is a different realm in listening and in experiencing and being really touched by the music. But there are also other people that are really starting to cry immediately by just being so much touched in the soul way. But on the other hand, we have also done some studies with this. And I think this is also kind of a key for technology that doesn't harm the people, because I think we are mostly harmed through technology because we are unconsciousness about what is happening, and we are overwhelmed from all what is given to our senses. We can't be as an eye person and confronting ourselves with the information, you could say. But so we had some, or let me point two important observations I had made. One was a person who is super sensitive. So she's harming, especially from artificial noises. This came together with the Lyme disease, and that's a person who's really attacked by all artificial sounds and electromagnetic interference, and she has not a border, really, a threshold where she can protect herself. And in her case, it was like she has moved into the woods to be in a calm situation. And she used the headphones, and she started to cry. It was for her like the first time she was able to listening to recorded things, to bird songs and all things just from a recording, and she didn't get hurt by it, because this second part, I would say, like the etheric side of sound, is provided, but you have to take it up. The same is a study where we used two different models, one with our technology, the other without technology, in a double-blind study. And they found out in the university hospital that the participants, it was in total 100, and the participants using the Loudsingr technology, they used the same music on both groups. They're on both groups, the normal relaxation parameters were measurable. So you hear the beautiful music and you relax, and this is normal. But the other one group, just let me finish this sentence. The group with the Loudsingr, there was measurable that the arterial system started to relax, and this is something which is not possible by just relaxing and breathing. It's a deep sleep relaxation state. So the point is, when there is something which is giving the opportunity to really have the whole picture of in this case sound, the body, but also the mind, is able to react in a positive way. And I think this is a path towards a moral technology, because you can't use it also selfish. This is just for your own wellness, well-being, and for your own enjoyment. You can't get, you can't make energy with it, or. So I
Very
think that's a
good.
good start.
All right. Aliodor, very quickly, and then I want to ask Donna her question.
Yes. So I wanted to point out that in Waldorf education, especially in kindergarten education, music is very, very important. And in nowadays, when children are bombarded and their senses are bombarded with so much information, and I'm sure that any of us who use technology feel that after we use it, it's like we come back from a realm without time, without space. We kind of come back from subnature. When we use pentatonic music, especially vocally, if we sing, children become more aware. They become conscious of their surroundings, but that's not all. When we sing and we accompany purposeful attitudes or acts that are with purpose. So it's not that we hear music with only for the let's say the passion of it, or the because we like it, but it accompanies us in a act with purpose. So this is one thing that I wanted to say, and it's making a difference right now into the world, and we should all embrace it. I tried it with my nieces as well by singing, and it really made a difference when they were on computers or outside. And one other thing is in G8275, Rudolf Steiner says that educators and teachers act from a music element to teach. So this is, I think, a very important aspect towards the future.
Very good. Thank you. And I want to come back with that when I ask Robert the question I'm going to be asking you. But before that, Donna, need to hear from you now. What is preventing us from taking a deeper look at the primacy of how we interact with the earth for daily life's necessities? And what can we do to alter seemingly small habits and choices that have large consequences for nature and the spiritual worlds?
Well,
You got all that?
yeah, I do. Thank you. Habits really are, they're inscribed in our etheric body. And this is one place where we need to start making a change. I'll go to what Robert was speaking about, doing the meditation and the exercises, especially the supplemental exercises. This is very important. We go through these not to torture ourselves, not to be bored, because they actually make changes in our etheric body, in our astral body, and allow our I to live. So it may take a long time. It may take a long time to come to consistent meditation. I know it took me years and years and years before I could meditate regularly twice a day. The only times I don't do it is when I'm ill, and that's very rare. So, but there are times I get there. I'm tired. I really would rather go to sleep right now, but I do it. But what happens in viewing the everyday world? We take it for granted. And this is what we need to stop doing. Rudolf Steiner tells us the things we need to become aware of are these stages: wonder, amazement, reverence, and acquiescence. These are big steps through a threshold every time. And you can train yourself. You wake up. Wow, I'm alive. I've had times where I've woken up and I've said, I've just come out of the spiritual world. It's, you've got to really want to have this, you've got to really want to have this fresh consciousness, this fresh experience of what you think you know, of what you see every day. You have to revigorate it every day. And this is part of what happens, I think, because I'm not capable of sustaining it either, is you live the life of a meditant. But if I go outside and I see my farm every day of the year, but when I come out the door, well, what is new there? What can I learn? You take a walk, the same thing, little tiny things. And we have to make them count. We have to enlarge them. We have to enlarge them and see, what are we missing? What are we not paying attention to? Where's the color? And that can be literal or spiritual color. What is the sound? Can I penetrate through this sound? What are the smells? Can I penetrate through the smells? What am I not noticing? This is the beginning of breaking these deadening habits, because this will also change your thinking.
All right, panelists, anything you can add here to this?
Well, just in the last couple of things Donna was saying, there's parts of knowledge of the higher worlds that may only be a sort of a page and a half, but you can spend your life on them. There's a page and a half or so where he talks about cultivating inner culture, learning how to pay attention to nuance in your inner life and nuance in your experience of the world around you. And some of what Donna was just saying reminded me of that section. And I think there's a tremendous amount of work we can do, what I would call on the path of engagement when we're out and about in the cut and thrust of life, to start to pay attention to nuance in a way that wakes us up, just as Donna was just saying. And that's something that we can do wherever we are, whenever we are. You're riding the subway, you're talking to a friend. There's there's always opportunities to pay closer attention to the nuance of your experience. And I think that's a significant part of learning how to live as a meditant, that one is always in some sense striving to be fully present and learn as much as you can from each passing moment.
All right, very good. Before I focus in on you, Robert, anyone else like to talk about this natural aspect? All right, then, Robert, let me preface my question to you by saying this about my meditative life. For 38 years, I worked in emergency management, which was rhythmic. There was nothing rhythmic about that existence. And that chaos ruled my life. Trying to, well, in the end, actually successfully being able to meditate on a repetitive scheduled basic was a huge accomplishment. And I got a great deal out of it. But I also found that it wasn't enough for me. When I retired, as luck would have it, I joined a Benedictine monastery here in Washington and became an oblate, a layman, and got into the rhythm, the rhythm, the rhythm of their existence, as well as their a cappella chant, Aliodor, in terms of music and non-electronic music, but actual vocal a cappella. I have gotten a huge benefit from this Benedictine path, which is coincidental with my anthroposophic path. So I throw that out as a way, albeit an external one, of adopting a rhythm within life that is nice, beneficial, if you're lucky enough to live next to a monastery of any sort. But now, getting to what you were talking about concerning meditation, let me ask you, let me pull my 4110, my question here. Right, okay. Yes, in terms of meditation and how we support each other in it and how we continue it in a world that is almost predicated against this sort of rhythmic, repetitious notion. There's another aspect here that I want to bring up with you, and that is something that Ara Torreson has brought out, in that the meditation that Steiner taught was geared toward getting us into the etheric realm and not the elemental realm, and it proved too hard, a meditative path. But that the meditative path, that the Nordic path that Ara is now talking about, is simpler, more easily accessible to us and for us, but also is a way of taking our meditation from solely a practice of peacefulness and mindfulness and getting to a point where we can join the spiritual world. And this new path is a way of actually taking our meditation and allowing us to leave from this earth to meditate into the actual spiritual worlds, specifically the elemental world, in a much more easily accessible way. So let me throw that over to you for comment, and please tell me how heretical I'm seeming.
So I understand the anthroposophical path that Rudolf Steiner laid out as combining both the northern and the southern path, as combining both the ecstatic and the mystical path. I've met Ari and we've had a number of interesting conversations. I don't think he's bringing anything new. I think what he's doing is helping people to have a first experience on the ecstatic path for the purpose of convincing themselves that there is something real that will happen if they meditate in a particular way. I do think there's a real risk with that, though. And I think that the risk of, so what Ari's doing is having people essentially focus in a way that awakens a third eye experience. So they have an image that comes to mind alive in their third eye, based on a particular kind of fading into something. Now, this is very similar to looking at a seed to see the flame form, or looking at a full-grown plant to see the future capacity of the plant. He is directing people to objects that Rosicrucians don't direct you to, and I'm not sure I understand the difference as to why. But the long and the short of it is you have an experience, a preliminary experience of imaginative cognition. You have an experience of a numinous imaginative reality, that you become aware of the will of another being in your imaginative space. So if I ask you to imagine an apple right now, you can do it, but you're aware that you're the one creating that imagination. When the third eye flashes into awareness, you become aware that something else is supplying the luminosity of the imagination, right? You're now having a vision as opposed to trying hard to remember what an apple looks like. So this kind of experience is a good thing. It is part of the chakra of the third eye chakra waking up, but it's a very limited aspect of the overall path. And most of a big part of the path is learning to get to know yourself in a profound and frankly critical way, so that you can take seriously what developments are required in your character. Take 3 steps in the development of your character for every 1 step in your spiritual development. I don't have a problem with what Ari's doing. I don't fully understand it. He's having many more spiritual experiences than I have, and I have good respect for the man. But for me, I'm a student of Rudolf Steiner's, and I want to take the anthroposophical path in its fullness, and recognizing, the significance of the personal development that's required as well. Is that an answer, Nick?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Now, let me ask you what I wanted to ask before we all started talking earlier in this. Concerning meditation and its importance to all of us, anthroposophists, in fact, its essential nature. Do you think that there is something that the society in Dornach can be doing to push the need for this among all of us globally? Is there something that they have been leaving out that maybe should be brought in?
Yeah, I do. I run these meditation courses on Zoom, and when I advertise them, I this last recently I ran 3 on Sunday mornings, and I advertise them on Facebook, and they fill up in a heartbeat. So I only take 16 people in each group, but I have 16 people from all over the world, and they fill up like that. And most of the people who are coming to these groups have read knowledge of the higher worlds, but they haven't necessarily practiced the meditation, so that we go in and we talk about what does it really mean to listen through sound to soul? What does it really mean to listen to a bird until such point that you feel a kind of inner connection with the soul of the bird? What does it really mean to pay attention to growth and decay frequently enough and in an unreserved enough way that you start to feel your heart chakra experiencing soul warmth and soul coldness? What does it mean to memorize a mantra and play it out of yourself as if you were a musician playing out a solo that you knew? Like, I think we need a lot more conversation about the actual work of meditation. Meditation is like a decathlon. Let's talk about what the pole vault feels like. What does it feel like when you do the pole vault? What does it feel like when you do the high jump? What does it feel like when I think we need to have a lot more conversation about this, partly to drum up people's encouragement and interest in actually doing the work. So I think it would be fantastic if there were ongoing courses in the very basic meditation practices coming out of Dornach.
Okay.
The path of veneration, devotion to truth and knowledge, developing certain kinds of thoughts that lead to a bloom of feeling in your heart of reverence or admiration for an example where the spirit of truth is shining through a human activity. This is something, as an anthroposophist, we all need to be practicing this. But how do you do it? Anyway, I think there's a lot that there's a lot we could be doing to helping ourselves be more interested, be more encouraged, be more energized around all of this basic day-to-day work.
Yes, absolutely. Leaving aside the horizontal aspect of this, the person to person, I want to open this up to the panelists. Does anybody have anything to say about how Dornach might be approached or encouraged or engaged in discussion about how to further the essential nature of meditation within anthroposophy in all of us? Oh yes, Aliodor.
I think the opposite question. Why should Dornach act upon us and
Right.
not the other way around? I mean, we have national branches, we have local branches, we are all members. If we act together in a group and ask for guidance or ask for exercises or even for their own experiences, why should it come from a centralized aspect and not the other way around? Whenever I asked for help, I either I got it directly through, let's say, an email, or usually some in a manner it came towards me, but I had to do the work first. And I think this is very important that we have to do the work first, because the spiritual realm does not come towards us if we don't do the work first. If we think about Michael and how he works with his gaze, yes, we have to do the work. And if it's good and it's moral and we work towards what we need to work, we will be offered the help. And that help comes through maybe Dornach or maybe from MysTech.
You see how I get you all to ask the questions that I can't because I'm just the moderator? Great. Andrew. Andrew.
Well, just real quick, because we got to get back on, I guess, what the webinar is about. But I know the natural science section, which I'm a member of, offers an annual conference on meditation. And they go into these questions that Robert's bringing up. And interestingly, they'll get 30 to 40 people to come to a science conference. They get 80 people to come to their meditation conference. So, but should we open up now for the audience?
Yes. Although Donna, you have something quickly.
Yes, quickly. I really think we could, because my feeling was the same as Aliodor's. Like we need to take direction, and if we're spiritual scientists, we should be able to go into phenomenologically what happens when we meditate, as Robert McKay was saying earlier. What derails us? What are the little things? What happens to our attention? Is it the same meditating in one country or another? No, I found out, no, it is not. All of these things, we need to pull this together. I went to Romania last year. It was like a completely different experience meditating in Romania than it was in the United States. Why? Because the doppelganger is less active. Yeah. So these are important things, and we need to share that, because if we don't share this, over and over again, all these solutions to things have to do with new ways of interacting with each other and and getting into the concreteness, anthroposophy is still so abstract, even amongst anthroposophists. And we have a danger of becoming modern Essenes.
All right. Militant meditation. Say it loud. I meditate and I'm proud. All right. Now we've reached the end of my technological know-how. Andrew, how are we throwing this open to? Because I
Well,
still
people
can't
can
see
ask
anybody but the
questions.
panelists.
Frank and I will try to harvest those questions. If you want to ask your question, and we would prefer you to do it that way,
Sure,
you
sure.
can click the raise hand button on the bottom. If you have to, it's under React. If you don't see it live, look for the React and then click raise hand. And then you can ask a question. I will tell you one from the audience that has come in already is how do we work with the elemental beings that we have in our machines today, especially computers or cell phones? How do we handle those? Any thoughts from anyone? Go ahead, Donna.
I find that it's important to make a relationship with a machine. You befriend it. And I don't mean like you're going to go out for tea or something, but it's like a respectfulness of you're here to do a certain job, and you can name your machine even. I do this with my car, and I actually feel a relationship with the elemental of my car. So this is one way that I know is very helpful. You can certainly see the opposite if you're upset. Things usually go haywire with machines or electricity or things like that.
I can totally agree. In my years being an engineer, it was always like there's some kind of connection to the being of the machine, and it's not only being friendly, but I think it's also important to being thankful, because all the Aramanic world is here to support us as a human being, and it's an essential part of our environment, and we have to be thankful for it. And when you look at it from an anthroposophical point of view, this is a task of the human being to help this Aramanic world to become the new Earth. And at that point, maybe it's also interesting to see it is so important that we open ourselves to the world, to the Earth. We had this picture from the cosmos, which I really liked, from Duff, and the Earth and the cosmic. But the important thing is that we are, as humans on this planet Earth, we are one with the planet Earth. It's our task to develop this planet Earth. And when you think about this, you immediately understand what is happening currently with Elon Musk and so on. It's an anti-Christian impulse to say we have to bring humanity to Mars. This is not the task of humanity. We are on Earth to change Earth. And this is also connected to the machine world, of course.
Aliodor, did you want to say something on
Yes.
this?
When I first started talking about technology in the kindergarten course, and when COVID started and we went online and everything happened, I started explaining a bit how things work. And there are two very important aspects, I think, in relation to technology that we should have. One is that it offers us an opportunity to become more aware of our own being and our own forces. And through that, we become aware that a computer is more than a computer, a machine is more than a machine, and it's something in the background that is working there. And I think the second one, and especially for those who have read the letters to members, or how do you call it in English, the GA26 that you presented beforehand, Doug. We have a responsibility for both the beings in the machines and for the higher hierarchies, for them to know each other, and they can only do it through us, because the achromanic beings can get in relation to Christ only through our work, and we have to, what you said, Andrew, to take what they have and see it in the light of the hierarchies. And through that, we have a responsibility, and we should look with a more empathy towards technology, and let's say like towards a partner or even a child who doesn't know exactly what he wants, but he knows he wants it now. But we have the knowledge and the empathy and the capacity to nurture it and offer it its possibility to take its role into the world when it becomes mature.
Back to you, Nick. I think Robert's got his hand up.
Yeah, so for a while in practicing the path of veneration, I was focused on technology, and I had a number of interesting experiences. Normally, my experience of the Ahrimanic forces has been through meditating on growth and decay, where you can see the Ahrimanic forces taking a living form and destroying it. But when I meditated on through the path of veneration on technology, certainly your thoughts go to the thinking of the human beings involved in the creation of the technology, but from there it goes to the beings who support this activity. And for the first time, I got a picture of the Ahrimanic beings in what you could call their wholesome realm. Still cold, but quite noble in a certain way, and quite bringing a kind of a cleverness that wasn't evil, but that actually could be of sufficient good for humanity in the stage that we're in. And so for me, this was the first time when I was able to have a feeling of the wholesome role of the Ahrimanic. And this was quite helpful. This path of veneration, when you bring veneration to things, things open up to you and you see them in a different way than if you just bring animosity. And so for the first time, I got a sense of the wholesome Ahrimanic, and I was quite impressed.
One quick word. When I first talked about Ahriman and its work and through technology, and one of our students said, "Oh, so we have," with an enthusiasm, "Oh, so we have the possibility to help Ahriman develop and take his role." So it was such an enthusiasm for someone who wasn't an anthroposophist, didn't have it, such an empathy towards it. So I thank you for your very well put veneration path.
One last quick thought, Ari Torsen, that you mentioned a while ago, Nick, has done a lot of webinars on this subject. And you might pick them up. I think Threefold Mankind out of Chicago has sponsored some dozen webinars with him, and I think those are available online. Anyway, we have Sylvie Jasinska. Are you there, Sylvie?
Yes, can you hear me? Because I'm not
Yes.
able to, somehow I'm not able to activate the video.
No, you can't, but you can speak at your
Oh,
question.
I see. I wanted to offer just very brief offerings. As far as Ari, he is walking meditation. So he's not going into a singular image. He to walk further through these spiritual realms, he has to transform something in his life on earth. Otherwise, he cannot pass any further. So this is very active being on the earth. If there is something hindering how you're living, being here, then you will not go further into the spiritual. So his meditation is very active. I wanted to offer, because I've met Ralf 5 years ago. It was in the Washington State at the Waldorf School at the MysTech conference, the first one combined after
remember
the closure. And when I had put on the loud singer, I had walked away a little bit through the hallway apart from other people, and I had placed a song that had a very deep meaning to me, and it was also in a language I actually do not comprehend the words. And I did have that experience that Ralf is speaking of, although I pushed back the tears because there's so many people there. And I'd say it is this sense of wonder, reverence, and acquiescing to it that had made me push through into that experience. And I would call it, by one word, innocence. To Aliodor, I want to offer something. I had actually watched what I could watch from the kindergarten conference, and the very beginning when the organ was playing and the camera was turned around. I've not experienced this in anything else in the Goethe television, where they actually turned the camera upon the audience and the organ. And it was incredible. And my sense was of the gnomes. It's like the gnomes are working in the kindergartens. This repetition that you call rhythm, that's the work of the gnomes. And because in the kindergartens, the teachers are doing a wonderful job at keeping the children connected to that. It's actually working. So what is being lost, I feel a vast loss in the grades, is still upheld in the kindergartens. It isn't just beautiful, but I think the gnomes are involved in it. They have a very strong presence. That was the feeling. It's just an offering.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Stefan, my man.
Hello, Andrew. Hello, everybody. Thank you for a very stimulating panel. And I want to go back to the question Robert asked in the beginning of his presentation, how we could support each other to become meditants. And then Nick shared his experience. We have both the same experience of joining a Benedictine monastery and getting to connect to the rhythm. And then a lot of us in the global anthroposophical movement have experience with different meditation groups from different spiritual schools, and they all seem to have their own agenda. And in my perception, only Steiner was capable of bringing these agendas together and designing the term Rosicrucian. And he designed that meditation with the 2 pieces of dead wood and the roses, the 7 roses growing out of it. And in my perception, these 7 roses may correspond to the different sections he founded within the anthroposophical movement. And they might correspond to the chakras as well. And then Robert talked about that he offers meditation groups on Sunday mornings. So my question is, wouldn't it be possible that all of you put your heads together and design anthroposophical guided meditation for the global anthroposophical movement to join in on a daily basis, possibly, and having a teaching within these different sections, different chakras, within that Rosicrucianism. So is that my question? Is that the question? Is that clear what I ask? Thank you.
All right. We are coming up to the end of our allotted 2 hours, and I don't see any other hands raised. John Roy. Okay, you made it right under the ask you to unmute. You made it right under the wire. John, can you speak to us?
Oh.
I can hear you. John, it looks
Hello
like
there.
you. Yeah,
Can you
that's
hear me?
good. That's good.
Okay. Hi.
But make it quick.
Excuse. Right. First question is, I didn't understand the question of loud singing. I ended this a bit past I was expecting on it, and I didn't understand what was explained on loud singing. The second question was, I really liked what Donna said about respect worthy when she explained that in that was important. And lastly, and the other thing I wanted to say was I really liked what Alexandra said about the need for us to come as our groups to learn about aspects which we'll take back to Dornath, as well as what Dornath does towards us. That's it.
So, John, do you have a direct question for one of the panelists?
I can give one sentence thing. So Loudsinger is a technology which is bringing back the lively side of sound in the reproduction. And to make it short, in the next issue of LaPre, I have written an article about this, and you can inform you more about the Loudsinger technology in this article.
What's LaPre?
LaPre, I don't know if it's pronounced right. It's in UK magazine, which is also very often used in America, I think.
Life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Yeah.
Oh, I don't know that. Thank you.
All right, very good. Let us take one
We
more
have
quick.
one more from Aaron. Let's let
Yep.
Aaron get in,
Yep.
and then we'll stop. Aaron.
Hello. Yes, hello. This is Aaron. I'm going to try to make it brief. And so if we accept Steiner's premise that true moral technology requires a machine to resonate with spiritual forces, this isn't going to happen by itself. It can only happen with intentionality. How are you, or do you know of people collaborating with technologists today to design such a system? This is things that I've had a lot of thoughts on, and I put some links in the chat if anyone's interested. But I'm just wondering, is there any other activity with other technologists?
I'll make a quick answer, and then Don, I can see want to add something too. But Aaron, there was a group in Australia called the Friends of MysTech, named Gopi Krishna Vijaya was one of their speakers one year, and they were trying to follow up on the work of Paul Emerson. There is a group called Anthrotech out of Paul Emerson's work. There's also another group called Strater Machine. And then there's MysTech. At this point in MysTech's life, we can't afford to have a researcher. We're trying to get to a place where we have critical mass in terms of membership and what we're doing, so that we can fundraise and get enough to maintain research. Don, I'll pass it over to you. You're on mute.
I was going to come to that in a different way where, it still resonates in my mind and so many of these things that we're talking about again depend on social forms. As Steiner said, we would not be able to use moral technique with machines to make etherically activated machines until we had established a threefold social order. And even when we go back to the meditation, I personally resist like a centralized operating like for everybody uniform. I think what would be better is for small groups of regional people to form little pods where we work together, whether it's can be in person would be even better, but even online, and to work as kind of outreach. And this would take, I think, the moral support of connecting with the other groups. And that's really how Doorknock was supposed to work. And it doesn't. So I think we could, learn from that. But finding these social forms where we can be active to help educate each other more. I forgot who was saying it. We all have something to teach each other. I think it was Aliodor who said this. And this is very important.
Exactly. And I'll just, to emphasize something that Steiner said is that we cannot develop this moral technology until threefolding exists strongly. It won't be released from the spiritual world. Back to you, Nick, and thank you, everyone.
All right. Yes, we have had a full 2 hours. This has been a very interesting discussion. It has ranged wide, but what of our discussions doesn't range wide? This is wonderful. I'd like to thank all of the panelists, Donna, Doug, Ralf, Aliodor, Robert, and Andrew. Thank you very much for allowing me to keep you on schedule. Thank you for allowing me to encourage you to say the things that I couldn't, so I maneuvered you well. I look forward to seeing everyone at our annual MysTech conference, August 6th through 9th. By the way, at the bottom of my screen today, there were a maximum of 155 dancing bears. So apparently we had a maximum of 155 people, which is nice. 300 registered and 155 decided to go off and play volleyball or attend the Jubilee prayer or 17. Mai in Norway. So, my friends, thank you ever so much. It's been an honor, and I look forward to seeing you again next time. I now release you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.